My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I love Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I am publishing a series of videos exploring the reasons why I am such a fan of Zack Snyder's film. In this series, you'll find my thoughts on topics that matter to me, like Larry Fong's cinematography, character analysis on Lex Luthor and Lois Lane, the Christian imagery, what I find hopeful about the movie, and yes, I'll address the critical reception. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I hope you will get something out of this series and find out why Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice has had such a profound, heartfelt, and inspiring impact on my life. Welcome to the Duck Milk Prod YouTube channel. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and this live stream is part of a series I am calling Reading Reviews with Rebecca, because I like alliteration, which will analyze the critical reception of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice through the negative reviews written by top critics from Rotten Tomatoes, one review at a time. Now, this is not meant to belittle anyone's opinions, but rather serve as a study of art criticism and how we discuss film. I'm hoping that this endeavor will encourage all of us to be better consumers of cinema. This week, I'll be reading through a review from the Seattle Times titled Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, epic battle lacks zip, bam, pow, written by Soren Andersen. You can click on the link in the video description if you'd like to follow along and read it for yourself. I just wanted to make sure everybody got the correct punctuation in that title. Lots of things going on there. We'll talk about it in a little bit. Let's see. This was written by Soren Andersen. So if Soren should ever see this video, I just want to say that I'm aiming to do this as civilly and analytically as possible. And I would ask that anyone watching live or posting in the comments would do the same. I'm simply taking a look at the criticism for and of BVS now from an historical point of view, given that these reviews were used by Warner Brothers in their decision-making process regarding the DC Extended Universe. Due to the poor reviews for Batman v Superman, the tone and approach to the franchise were changed for Justice League and ultimately led to the destruction of the Snyderverse. And I'm sure there are some people who would say, Rebecca, the Snyderverse is still going. There's still Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and Jason Momoa's Aquaman and Ezra Miller's Flash. Yeah, but not as it was. And that's what I mean by that. So I just wanted to clarify that. Before I get into Soren's thoughts, though, I'm sure there are some people who might be watching this thinking, Soren is a legit film critic from a major news outlet like the Seattle Times. What could you possibly say about this, Rebecca? So that's a fair question, and I totally understand it. I would be asking the exact same question. So I just want to give people watching a little background on me. So hopefully that will inform you on what I can bring to the table. I graduated from the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, with a degree in telecommunications and film and a focus on broadcast television production. While I've never been to film school, in my television and production experience, I've learned about and have lots of practice in operating cameras, shot composition, and editing. Lighting, green screen, and audio are my weak spots, admittedly, but I've been working on those. After working in local TV news, running cameras, and working in production, I got a job at Turner, now Warner Media, or whatever they're calling themselves now, for 14 years. I worked with networks, or brands as they call them now, like TBS, TNT, Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, Boomerang, True TV, and Turner Classic Movies as a video encoding specialist. I also did a fair amount of closed captioning work and DVD and Blu-ray QC. In case you are wondering how I podcasted about Supergirl and the DCEU films while working for a Time Warner company, I actually got permission and clearance from my human resources representative. If you think I wouldn't criticize stories that were under the same corporate umbrella, that was never a problem nor a concern for me. If I thought the Supergirl TV series or a DCEU film had faults, I said so. In the last 17 years, I have served as a director, technical director, and camera operator at my local church in a live production capacity. I've been a video editor for 17 years, having worked in Avid, Final Cut, and Premiere Pro CC. In my day job, I shoot and edit news and documentary-style video content that involves interviews and narrative storytelling. I'm also currently an amateur photographer and am aiming to improve my efforts in still photography. You can check out my work over at Instagram at @TheDerbyKid. Link is in the video description below. While discussing these film reviews, music and film scores will inevitably come up. It may be good to know that in my life I have played piano, handbells, clarinet, bass clarinet, bassoon, acoustic guitar, and have even started learning how to play the ukulele. I've played in marching bands, symphonic bands, and wind ensembles, and have sung in many choirs. While I don't consider myself a world-class musician, far from it, actually, I do know some things about music and am a big fan of film scores and soundtracks. In addition to my production and musical experience, I have had lots of experience in art criticism. I've been podcasting about television and film since 2009 and do so on a regular basis with Supergirl Radio, a podcast I co-host about the CW Supergirl TV series. I am also a writing contributor to the Justice League Universe podcast that offers analysis on the DCEU films. You might even hear my voice occasionally in recordings and audio commentaries over there. I'm not an expert, but I care deeply about film, television, storytelling, and art. So I hope this gives you a background on where I'm coming from. All right, now that we have gotten that out of the way, we can get into the review and start checking it out. And I'm realizing that I chose the wrong background for this. Maybe the Doomsday frame was not the best choice. It looks like I have like big bulky shoulders and spikes coming at me. It looks like I am Doomsday, so I didn't I didn't really think that through before I got on this live stream. I was just trying to find something different, but that's funny looking. Okay, so let's get into the review. And this is Soren Andersen's review from the Seattle Times. The title here, and this is what we always kind of start with, the title is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Epic battle lacks zip, bam, pow. I should also say that before we get into the actual review, the movie review, there's actually this little segment underneath the title. It says, quote, movie review of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. An unrelieved atmosphere of oppressiveness makes Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice a joyless slog. And the rating is 1.5 stars out of 4, unquote. I appreciate that Soren here actually wants to put a little effort into the title of the review by including the Batman 66 sound effect words. Maybe that wasn't Soren's idea. Maybe I'm giving Soren credit for that, even though it could have been an editor who wrote it. Though I don't know why BVS has to have any zip, bam, or pow. Is this literal in the sense that it needs to have a more lighthearted tone like Batman 66? Or is it more in the sense that Soren just wasn't wowed by anything from the film? Hopefully, once we get into the review, we'll learn more about it. I think the title's a little hokey, but at least, some of these reviews don't even have a title. They just title it after the film. So at least this actually put some effort into it, even though it's quite dated and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But hopefully, maybe once we actually start reading the review, the headline or the title will make sense. I do have a question about, quote, an unrelieved atmosphere, unquote. What does that mean? Did Soren need relief during the film? I think there are plenty of scenes throughout Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice that give the viewer plenty of time to relax in between fight and action sequences. Also, shouldn't we want a film to be continuous, as one of the definitions of unrelieved suggests? Otherwise, you're not getting a film that has any pace to it. So I have a lot of questions about that phrasing. But then Soren goes on to say that it's an quote unrelieved atmosphere of oppressiveness unquote, which is quite the phrase. Really just showing how much Soren did not like this film. Although gave it 1.5 stars out of 4. I'm curious about that 1.5 stars. Maybe we'll find out what the 1.5 is due to. But yeah, so let's get back to unrelieved oppressive atmosphere of oppressiveness. Uh I have a question, or maybe two questions. How is it an unrelieved atmosphere of oppressiveness? And why does this top critic feel oppressed by the film? Doesn't say here. Maybe we'll find out. Well, let's come back to that and see if we figure that out. And Soren says Dawn of Justice is a quote joyless slog unquote. Why? Why is it a joyless slog? Hopefully, we'll find that out. But the better question, I guess, is to ask, why does it need to be joyful? It's a story about the death of Superman. Why does it need to be joyful? Isn't that actually the opposite tone of what it needs to be? It needs to be serious and mournful. It's a film about death. That's not to say that it doesn't have any hope or optimism in it, because it does. It's one of the most hopeful films I've ever seen, and that's not being hyperbolic. It's very hopeful at the end of it. But to say it needs to be joyful is kind of overlooking and dismissing the story that it's actually telling. I can maybe here give Soren a pass for the word slog. BVS is a long film, even the theatrical version is, and it does take its time to slowly build up the storylines and character arcs. So I guess if you don't have patience for that kind of thing, I'd understand the use of the word slog. But it's also not the fault of the film. If you have a short attention span and don't want to put any effort into it as a viewer, you get out of it what you put into it. So hopefully Soren will expand on this perspective and give us more an idea of why these words are used. Let's see. I'm going to hop in the chat just after a couple little segments and see what people are saying. Yeah, there's there's some mention of the doomsday behind me. Andy says Rebecca Day. So and Dennis says you are doomsday of the critics. I mean, I'm bringing the doom to them. Just kidding. Let's see what else. Let's see. Andy also asks, I don't even know what relief means in this context. What does there have to be a relief as in a conclusion when this was part two of a larger story? That's a great point. And then Andy also says one of the many hopeful moments in the film I can name right now is when Superman goes to save people that see him float in the sun. Yeah, Superman actually does save a lot of people. Let's see. Dennis says if they want to see what an oppressive atmosphere looks like, they should watch Chinatown. You want to talk about a grim film? Chinatown, great film, also pretty grim. And Dennis also asked the question that I ask quite a bit: is if there's no darkness, is there really any light? It's a great question. Great question. All right, so let's hop back into the review. Soren goes on to say, quote, they should have left well alone. It's only been 4 years since Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale wrapped up what now seems likely to be long remembered as the definitive Batman movie trilogy of Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises, unquote. I'm not going to argue with Soren about the definitive Batman movie trilogy. I definitely think it is in terms of like actually having a Batman trilogy. The Dark Knight trilogy is the greatest and it is the best. I love Christian Bale's Batman. I love the Christopher Nolan Batman films. I would argue, well, I wouldn't say maybe The Dark Knight Rises is better than The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight might be a better film, but The Dark Knight Rises always my favorite. And that maybe has something to do with the bat and the cat that are in it. But I'm not going to argue with Soren over that being a great trilogy. The question I have about this section is, just because Batman appears in Batman v Superman, he is one of the characters in the title. Why would Soren bring up Christopher Nolan and the Dark Knight trilogy right at the top of this review? BVS is only, I think, executive produced by Nolan. He didn't direct it. This is not a Nolan film. And the Batman in the story isn't related to Christian Bale's Batman at all. It's not played by Christian Bale. It's not tied to those films, has nothing to do with those films. Right from the start of this review, this feels more like an editorial than actually something that's trying to take a look at the merits of the film and how it did, whether it was good or bad or what was going on in it. To me, that's more of what a critique or review should do, is talking about the actual merits of the film. This is just bringing up things that don't determine whether a film is good or bad. You're just stating facts. The things that Soren says about Christopher Nolan and the Christian Bale Dark Knight trilogy, those are actual films. That's a thing that happened. Does it have to do anything with whether or not BBS is a good or a bad film? Absolutely not. So I don't understand why you would start your film review with that, because it has nothing to do with the actual Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice film. Continuing on, Soren writes, quote, but the desire of Warner Brothers to counter the massive and growing dominance of Marvel in the realm of superhero movie making has brought forth Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, a picture specifically engineered to launch a profusion of DC Comics derived costumed crime fighter franchises. Well, good luck with that, unquote. Whew, that was quite the sentence from Soren. I gotta give it up. I mean, that was quite the sentence. I mean, lots of adjectives. I mean, lots of descriptions. Very, very well written, I have to say. But just like with mentioning Christopher Nolan and the Dark Knight trilogy, why would you need to bring up Marvel in a film review? This has absolutely zero to do with the merit of BVS as a film. Absolutely nothing to do with it. Nobody in the film had any ties to Marvel. This was not a Marvel film, and it wasn't trying to be. So I don't understand why it has to be brought up in this. And again, these are just kind of stating facts. Marvel had a growing dominance. That's a fact. Who cares? That has nothing to do with Batman v Superman. So I'm waiting for the actual analysis of the film in this review. I keep crossing my fingers to hope it comes. So we'll continue on just to see when it happens. Quote, the powers that be at Warner gave director Zack Snyder of Man of Steel and 300 a budget of $250 million, according to published reports, and what he has given in return is a movie that treats the audience as an enemy, a victim, unquote. This is just more of stating facts. We are getting into this review, and there has been nothing here about the actual merit of the film. Maybe it's coming. Well, maybe it's coming. But this is just a lot of retread and stating things that are facts. Here in particular, it's a statement about the budget and other films that Zack Snyder directed. It looks like Soren is going to explain to us why Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, quote, treats the audience as an enemy and a victim, unquote. So we'll keep reading. That's a pretty big statement because Soren is trying to speak on behalf of everyone who watches this film. That really bothers me about these kinds of reviews. I would rather you just speak about your perspective and not try to tie it to how everyone sees it, because not everybody's going to see it the way you see it, Soren. Not everybody. I didn't. And I know lots of other people who didn't agree with your statement that BVS is a movie that treats the audience as an enemy or a victim. So I'd appreciate it if you not lump me into that audience, because I think that's what has happened. So I really, to be quite honest, detest when reviewers do that, because you can't speak. You're not speaking for me. You don't know my opinion. You don't know what I think, and I'd appreciate it if you don't bring me into it as an audience member. So just a pro tip, if you want to get into film reviews and film critiques, I think it's best if you just state your opinion and not try to speak for everyone in the world. It's ridiculous. Okay. All right. Continuing on. Soren writes, quote, "For starters, Snyder wields the bombastic drum-heavy orchestral score like a sledgehammer, as if trying to batter the audience into submission with sonic overkill," unquote. Yeah, some of the score is heavy, but it's because the story and the characters call for it. It's a film about a vengeful and angry Batman. Doesn't it make sense that his musical theme would sound like that? That would be angry and vengeful? What about the nightmare sequences when Darkseid has taken over the world? That'd be a pretty scary place. Shouldn't the music underscoring that reflect that terrifying situation? And what about a fight to the death between two superheroes? I would think the music would be pretty aggressive there too. So really, all of that Soren is saying here is that the score did its job in contributing to telling the story. And it really bothers me that a lot of these reviewers about that are reviewing about BBS talk about the score in this way and fail to mention that the score is just doing its job. Its job is to tell the story through the music. And Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL did a really great job with the Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice score. It creates an atmosphere and tells the emotion of the characters through the music. And I think that's really pretty impressive. And it gives characters like Lex Luthor and Batman musical themes that help you identify when they're on screen and help you know when things are coming or what's happening with their characters through their musical theme. So just because you don't like the music doesn't mean it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So I think that's not analyzing the music. It's just saying, well, I don't like it. Well, who cares if you don't like it? It's it's doing its job. And this also fails to mention the aspects of the score that don't, quote, batter the audience into submission with sonic overkill, unquote. Because there are a lot of tracks that are more reverent, that are quiet, that are haunting, and that are beautiful. Tracks like Beautiful Lie, Day of the Dead, Problems Up Here, Vigilante, May I Help You, Mr. Wayne, They Were Hunters, and one of my personal favorites, This Is My World. So it's funny to me that the reviewers love the word bombastic. These top critics love the word bombastic, and they love to talk about how the BBS score is just killing you and putting you into oppressive submission, but they never talk about the tracks and the moments of the score that are actually really beautiful. And I personally think that is negligent to not mention that because there are some really reverent moments in the film, especially when Superman dies. There's a lot of choral aspects of that, and it's one of the best parts in the film. So I think that's really strange that's you know what? I don't think it's strange. I know why they do that. I know they want to focus on the negative. They don't want to talk about how there are other moments of the score that are actually very quiet. They just want to talk about how much they didn't like that bombastic part. So I get why they do that. It's just kind of all part of an agenda, in my opinion. Because if you were being objective as a reviewer, you would mention the different aspects of the score and what kind of story it was trying to tell. All right, I'm gonna hop back into the live chat to see what other people are talking about. Let's see. Dennis asks, using Nolan while attacking Snyder for being too dark is kind of hypocritical, don't you think? Yeah, that is kind of a funny thing to say because Christopher Nolan, there are like jokey bits and funny humorous aspects in the Dark Knight trilogy, but those films are very serious. They tackle a lot of serious subjects. The character drama, especially with Bruce Wayne, is very serious. He goes through a lot of heartache and trial. And so I think that BBS is really just kind of continuing the idea that these films are better when they're actually taking the character seriously and telling really good stories, even if it's hard, even if you put the characters in trying times and really make them fight for things. I think both the Nolan Batman films and Snyder's take on the DC universe are very similar in how they approach. They're not exact copies of one another, but they take a similar approach that they don't want to make a joke out of it. They don't want to treat these characters if they're just silly little comic book movies for kids. They want to tell stories that are a little more mature, and I think there's a place for that. So yeah, if you're going to say that the Snyder films are too dark or too serious, what do you say about Christopher Nolan's films? Where in the second film, Bruce Wayne, who had a lady interest, a lady love interest, Rachel Dawes, she dies at the end in a really tragic way, and it's kind of a bummer. So there are some really serious things and really dramatic, awful things that happen in those films. And so, if you think the Snyder films are dark, you know, buckle up on those Christopher Nolan Batman films. Let's see. I'm going to keep going in the chat. Let's see. Dennis also says, if the audiences in question are dumb and need the movie to be spoon fed to them, sure, they are the enemy, but they are not the victim. The only thing I'll say about that is I think there are different kinds of audiences. And I may talk about this a little bit at the end of this series, with C.S. Lewis and some of the things that he talked about, the many and the few, in his book on art criticism. Because there are some people who just kind of read a book and they put it down, they never pick it back up again. And then there are other people who might pick up a book and really study it, and they reread it and they reread it and they reread it. And there are different kinds of people. There are different kinds of audiences, whether it's film, books, TV, music, any kind of art, painting, whatever it is. There are some people who are going to just kind of see it and then walk away. And then there are other people who are going to really dig into it. And so I think when you talk about the audience, you can't just lump every single person of the audience into one generic thing, because everyone sees film differently. Because you're going to put some of your personal experiences. We all do this, and I can speak for everybody on this particular statement, because we all do this. We all go into watching a film with our personal life experiences. We take things like, when I watch BBS, I have a lot of reaction to it because of my faith, because of things that happened to me when I was going through breast cancer. There are all these kinds of things. The moments with the fathers. I think about my father who died in 2006. I can kind of relate to Clark when he's having that conversation with Jonathan on top of the mountaintop in the Arctic fortress of solitude. I bring those things to my viewing of Batman v Superman, because of that. We all do this. Everybody. I know there are probably some people who would say, Rebecca, I don't do that. You do that. Every single person does that. All of your life experiences, all the things that you love and hate, you take into those kinds of things. We all see these stories differently, which is cool, because we all have different perspectives and we can share our different experiences on how we view the film. And that's why film discussions are really fun, because everybody will see it differently. So that's why I say, don't lump the audience into one big thing, because there is no one big thing with an audience. Let's see. Andy says, heavy story equals heavy score. What did he want? Little Mermaid Under the Sea music to play during those BBS fights? Exactly. In my personal opinion, the score should help tell the story, no matter what it is. It should have an effect on the audience and help you go through that story with those characters and go on that journey with them. And if a score does its job, it's going to be memorable, and it's also going to help you feel those emotions. And I think the score from BBS does that really well. Let's see. Let me keep going. Let's see. All right, I think those are all the things I wanted to talk and react to about the chat comments here. There was a mention of Batman Returns about how that movie was dark. 100%. And that's also one of my favorite films. I might have a type, but I love Batman Returns. I do. I think it's great. I'm a big Tim Burton fan. So I'm a sucker for Tim Burton movies. They're weird and I love them so much. he is Tim Burton and Zack Snyder and even Christopher Nolan, true film auteurs. They are people, you look at that film, you know who made that film. You will not see a Tim Burton film and be like, oh, who made that? That's a Tim Burton film. You know it's a Tim Burton film just by looking at it. So I love that about them. All right, I'm going to keep going into the review. Quote, it's a murky looking picture filled with scenes of high decibel violence that climaxes in a protracted slugfest between the two superheroes, then segues into a seemingly longer and even more brutal special effects filled battle with one of the ugliest monsters ever seen on the big screen. That's why I put the background as Doomsday here. Wonder Woman, played by Gal Gadot, puts in a brief appearance during the fight, setting the stage for her own movie due out next year, unquote. Soren describes as a murky looking picture, which I think is quite funny in my opinion. That the use of picture, he's like an old movie. He's like an old movie director talking about the pictures, like from the 1950s. Have you seen the picture I just made? Yeah, I think Martin Scorsese talks like that still. Talking about the picture he made in 1970. Everybody talks about the pictures. I see Soren in my mind, like with one of those long cigarette holders, with like maybe like a hat from the 1940s, talking about the picture he just watched. The old picture. So anyway, I just thought that was funny because people really don't talk like that about movies and films anymore. They say picture because films are motion pictures, and so some people will, but I just think it's funny. I'm curious about Soren's background and how he studied film. I wonder if he says that a lot, that he talks about the pictures he watched. But I just thought it was funny because it makes me, I love films from the 1940s, and so the the um the picture that saying the word picture puts in my mind just puts me in a warm, happy place. So I love the old verbiage there. But part of me thinks that and I shouldn't say part of me, all of me thinks that maybe Soren put that in to make the review sound a little more intellectual, talking about the picture, not just the movie. It's the picture that I saw. Anyway, I've stayed on that too long. But describing BVS as a murky looking picture. How? Which scenes? Which scenes in BVS are murky looking? Is there an intention behind the way that some of these scenes look, or all of these scenes look? I'm sure that Zack Snyder had something to say about that. I'm sure Larry Fong had something to say about that because every shot in a film is made that way, especially with Zack Snyder and Larry Fong, because their partnership and their collaboration with the films that they've made, they've always made choices based on the story and what they wanted to do. Zack Snyder sits down and he storyboards everything himself, the whole film himself, and they talk about that. Those are discussions that they have about what kind of lens they want to use, what they want it to look like, what kind of colors do there need to be in there, what kind of light needs to be there. So just saying murky looking picture is such a disrespect to the director and the cinematographer, because especially when you don't back up what you're saying. Please give me an example of the murky looking picture that you're talking about. Also, this goes back to the idea that this film is about death. This film is about Superman dying and being framed and the Capitol building blowing up. It's not supposed to be sunny and cheery. What do people want out of this film? It's supposed to be a little darker. So I don't know. I'm just curious about. I wish I could ask Soren which scenes are you talking about? There are plenty of scenes that are in the daylight that are brighter, and we've gone over those before on these live streams. So I won't repeat that because we've already covered the daytime scenes and the color scenes. But it just really bothers me when someone will describe something in these reviews and then they don't back up what they say, because you could say anything. You could say I don't know, gremlins were in this movie, and like you could just move on in the next part of the review, and people are just going to be like, well, the review said there are gremlins in this film. You're just putting something in there and you're not backing up what you're saying. So I think that for me, if I was going to describe it as murky looking, I would say, and it was murky looking in this scene, in this particular moment. Then I could go back and look at the film myself and say, you know what, I disagree. I don't think that was very murky looking at all. And I think that's why they do it. I think these film reviewers want to keep their comments as generic as possible so that you can't fact check them, so that you can't go back and argue with them. If they keep it generic and vague enough, then who knows what they're talking about, which is frustrating when you're trying to read it because I want to know what you're talking about. So that is bothersome to me. Also, Soren mentions, quote, high decibel violence, unquote. Is that supposed to be a bad thing in a versus film wherein Doomsday shows up? To me, that description sounds like the film did its job. High decibel violence. That's what Doomsday is supposed to do. That's what happens in the Death of Superman comic book. There's a lot of high decibel violence, even in a book form where you can't hear anything. You can maybe get that out of it because, or and I shouldn't say I should say I got that out of it when I read the Death of Superman book, because there's a lot of hitting and sound effects in the book on the page, and so I think there should be some high decibel violence in a film that has Doomsday and the Death of Superman. So again, I don't know what these film reviewers want out of this film. Then Soren goes on to say, quote, one of the ugliest monsters ever seen on the big screen, unquote. Is this supposed to be a bad thing? Is this supposed to be a negative description of Doomsday? It's Doomsday. He's not supposed to be pretty. No monster is. That's why they're a monster. And you know what? The CGI is actually quite good on Doomsday and Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. It's going to hold up many, many years from now. They did a really good job of trying to make him look real and have real actions and feel like he was a real character, even though he was just kind of a monster who destroyed things. And that's really all Doomsday is supposed to be. He's not supposed to be some highly intellectual being. He's just supposed to cause havoc. So I have to take I have to disagree, I guess I should say. I almost said I want to take umbrage, but then I didn't know if I was going to take umbrage correctly. I didn't know if that was the right phrase. If that's correct, I take umbrage with the statement that he's one of the ugliest monsters ever seen on the big screen. In fact, in the dialogue in Batman v Superman, when they're in the Kryptonian scout ship, the AI there tells Lex Luthor that he is giving life to, quote, a deformity so hateful to sighted memory, unquote. And the AI calls it, quote, a desecration without name, unquote. Doomsday looks exactly like he's supposed to. He looks exactly like a deformity so hateful to sighted memory, a desecration without name. He's not supposed to be pretty. I don't understand what Soren's talking about. So that is quite strange, in my opinion. Okay, I'm going to hop in the chat and see what everybody's talking about. Jose, I'm guessing, says these people love their gray Marvel comedies. That, I know that's supposed to be a joke. I see your LOL there. But it's really actually quite something, because there is a YouTube video. Oh, I wish I could remember the title of it. But there's somebody maybe could go look it up. I'll try to see if I can link it in the video description below after the live stream. There was a YouTube analysis from someone who took a look at the color grading of the Marvel films and how they were all kind of color graded the exact same way. And there were a lot of grays. There's no true blacks in a lot of those Marvel movies. The Marvel pictures, they don't have like true black, and that's what separates them, I would argue, from like a BVS Dawn of Justice, because Zack Snyder makes it a point to really get that true black, so things pop out in the screen. And make it really, the colors pop and just everything within the frame kind of sticks out. And so if I can find it, I'll try to see if I can, maybe if y'all hang with me, I'll see if I can dig it up really quickly. Marvel Cinematic Universe color grading. Let's see if I can find it really quickly. I think it's this video that's called "Why Do Marvel's Movies Look Kind of Ugly," which is a great YouTube title. I'm gonna I'm going to link that in the chat, and I will also um, link it in the video description after the live stream is over, because I think it's a really actually well thought out video essay, and it made me kind of look at some of those movies very differently. And I always kind of noticed it, but I couldn't really put thoughts to or words to thoughts, because there were some aspects of those movies that just kind of didn't look that great. But there's an argument to be made, and I think that YouTube video makes a pretty good argument there. Let's see. Andy also says about Doomsday. Doomsday is ugly because he was an experiment that was repeated over and over again, and I'm pretty sure the creators were not aiming for pretty. So the reviewer is quite something. Yeah, there's a whole history of Doomsday. It sounds like, according to BBS, that the Kryptonian Council had tried to create a Doomsday before, possibly succeeded in it, and the Kryptonian Council said that, not again. We're not doing that again because we screwed up the first time. And Lex Luthor was like, you know what? I don't care. I'm still going to go through with it. So I think even the Kryptonians knew. Let's see. Let's see. Dennis says, Rebecca, you are a better viewer than my parents. They hate old movies. I mean, they're just some things that are, gonna be, up people's alley, and maybe some things are just not. But I fell in love, just as a side note, I fell in love with classic film. I guess I was maybe seventh grade, seventh, eighth grade. I might have been 14 or so. One summer, I was at my grandparents' house in South Carolina, and it was during the summer. And I was kind of bored, just kind of hanging out by myself. And I was flipping channels, and I happened to stop on, I believe it was TCM at the time. And it was Follow the Fleet with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. And this is why I'm a big Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers fan. And I started watching it because there wasn't a lot to watch that day, and so I was watching it, and it was during a musical number in the picture, and they're kind of doing some comedy bits during the music and the dance, and it actually made me laugh. And I remember thinking, as a wee youngster at the time, I was thinking, wow, black and white movies are actually, they could have some value. I didn't put it in those terms when I was a teenager, but that's kind of what I was thinking, like, oh, black and white movies could actually be good. And so that was the first time that I really saw an older film as something that could be entertaining. Like, it wasn't just, ugh, it's in black and white, forget it, I don't want to watch it. But I actually sat there and watched it, and I was entertained by it. And so now I have a big box set of Fred Astaire and Ginger Roger films, and I love them. And so I especially love the 1940s era of film. It's just, there's nothing like it. The late 30s is okay. There's some Fred and Ginger movies there, but the 1940s, man, I just love those films so much. Okay, let's see. And I would encourage people to watch classic film. You'd be surprised at what you learn about the language, that you learn about architecture or technology. And this is a really long tangent. I'm sorry, but I just want, now you've gotten me talking about classic film. There are a couple things that that I want to mention, is that when my grandfather, who lived to be in his 90s, he once told one of my friends who he hadn't seen in a while, he asked her, "Are you hi-hatting me?" And we were like, "Grandpa, what does that mean? Nobody says that." And he explained to us that if you hi-hat somebody, you're kind of ignoring them. You're kind of not talking to them. And I was like, that's kind of a weird thing for my grandfather to say. And I want to say it was in the somebody can fact check me on this, but I was watching a classic film. I think it was the original Scarface. And in the film, somebody says the word hi-hatting, or the phrase, I guess it is. And I was like, oh my gosh, my grandfather just used a term from like the 1930s or 40s. That must have been what they said back then. And so you can learn about language through classic films. Some of those Fred and Ginger movies and some of those kind of movies in the 1940s, they'll have old elevators, which I think are so fascinating. So you can see some of the technology, and also a great film to watch if you're interested in how technology was in the old days. Watch a classic film called titled Desk Set. It has Katharine Hepburn in it, and it is wild because the whole film is about these ladies who do all this research. It's basically before the internet and before all of the knowledge that you could acquire was as typing at your fingertips. All these ladies would be in this room all day, and people would ask them questions about things, and they would go research it. And the quagmire of the film is that a computer is brought into the office, and the computer now can do their jobs. So that is quite fascinating to watch now, in these days of the internet, of the World Wide Web, because that was the way it was back then. I think that was from the 1950s. So if you don't even like classic film, watch it for the history of it. It's really, really interesting to see what life was like back then. So that's going to end my tangent on classic film. You got me started talking about it. I could talk about it all day, so I'm going to stop now. Let's see. I'm going to see what everybody else is saying in the chat. Dennis says most directors do movies out of comic book characters. Zack Snyder does comic book with actors. That's a great way to put that. Let's see. I'm going to keep scrolling down. Andy says the reviewer should go watch Krypton season 2 and see the graphic origin story of Doomsday and see that they by no means were aiming to make him pretty. Yeah, Doomsday's just supposed to be a big old gross monster. Like I don't know what people think he should be. Let's see. Yeah, and Dennis brings up the fact that Zack said he had plans to reveal the original Doomsday was still around, and that the reason that Krypton has a broken moon, Man of Steel, is that Doomsday. Yeah, they sort of allude to that in the there's like a bonus feature on the Man of Steel disc that talks about that. Kind of is like an Easter egg on that. Let's see. And Dennis asks if I've seen The Third Man. That's one of the films that I always like. It's on my list of things to watch. I've heard about it. I kind of know about it, but I haven't watched it. I think Third Man is kind of film noir. I need to catch up. That's a genre that I would like to watch more of. A couple of years ago, I tried to get into that, where I was like watching, is it Barbara Stanwyck? I was watching some I want to say Barbara Stanwyck was in a couple of film noirs that I was trying to watch. But yeah, so let's see. And then Dennis also says, fun fact, the 1983 Scarface remake was despised by critics and now it's a classic. Yeah, I mean, that's just another example. I've seen both of the Scarfaces, and I think they both have their own little take on it, and I think they're both great. So if you watch the original Scarface, hit me back up because I haven't watched it in a while, but I think that's the film I watched where somebody says hi-hatting in the film, and I was like, whoa, that's blowing my mind right now. All right, so let's get back into the review. Soren says, quote, the motivation for the titular conflict arises from the desire of Batman to punish Superman for the terrible destruction wrought on Metropolis by Supes' battle. And it's strange the way this is written here, SUPE''S. That's nobody writes that like that. Supes' battle with General Zod at the end of 2013's Man of Steel, which was Snyder's first foray into the world of Superman. Thousands died in that epic battle. The level of carnage enrages Batman to the point of vengeance and psychosis, unquote. Well, this section is just recapping Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Man of Steel. Soren is just describing those films. This isn't a review of them at this point. It's just telling us what happened. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Okay, that's great. Continuing on, quote, the citizens of Metropolis are none too pleased with that outcome either, and Batman v Superman expands on the theme central to Man of Steel, that Superman, the alien from another planet, is a creature to be distrusted and eventually loathed, unquote. Yeah, that's what happened. This is more recapping. Yeah, okay, this sounds great. This is great. Thanks for the recap on things. Okay, so continuing on, Soren writes, quote, goading the two into a fighting frame of mind is scheming business mogul slash evil genius Lex Luthor, played by Jesse Eisenberg with a peculiar jitteriness and a full head of hair, a strange departure from a character whose most defining feature in the comics is baldness, unquote. Now, this is interesting because Soren has clearly never read Superman Birthright, which is in which Lex Luthor looks just like Jesse Eisenberg's Lex, and B, Soren doesn't acknowledge that Lex's hair is cut off at the end of the film, that it's buzzed off, revealing the bald Lex Luthor most people will recognize. And this wasn't even like something that the film revealed. They showed a picture of bald Jesse Eisenberg before the film came out. We knew he was going to be bald. I don't know what Soren's talking about. This change in hair is an intentional choice. It's not like, he just happened to like want to get his hair cut. Like this is an intentional choice by the story and the filmmaker to have Lex shave his head, and it's meant to reveal Lex Luthor's full descent into madness. This is when you know Lex Luthor has become the villain of the story, as Smallville would put it, because he's at the beginning of the film, he's kind of like this philanthropist, and by the end of the film, Lex Luthor, he's gone off the deep end mentally. Like he's just he created a doomsday. The dude is gone. Like he doesn't even care about his own life, and so by the end of the film, you know he's mentally gone. Like he's mentally become a villain and like an insane person. And so the fact that he gets his head shaved in prison, that really says something about his character. And I wish that Soren would actually mention that in the review. That would actually be a really interesting analysis to put in there. Really a good, juicy character journey bit in the review. But maybe that would actually require actual analysis of the story and of the character. So Soren next goes on to talk about Ben Affleck and Batman, writing, quote, as Batman, Ben Affleck glowers or glowers and rasps and looks downright doleful all the time. Though Batman has never been a load of laughs, Affleck seems to have decided to try to out angst Bale in his portrayal. Missing in action is any sense of the character's humanity, unquote. I don't know why Christian Bale's mentioned a second time in this review. What does he have to do with anything? Soren's description about Ben Affleck's Batman reads at first glance as if it's a negative statement. If you did not know what these words meant, if you did not look them up in the dictionary, you would probably, and maybe I shouldn't say you would. I did. When I first looked at the review, I was like, "Oh, he's really dogging Ben Affleck's Batman here." But then I looked up the words, and I think that Soren is just describing Batman. So, glower means to look or stare with sullen annoyance or anger. And another definition is a sullen, brooding look of annoyance or anger. The word rasp means to rub with something rough, to grate upon, or to irritate. And the word doleful means full of grief, cheerless, expressing grief, or sad, or causing grief or affliction. That's Batman. He basically, it comes across like it's a negative, like putting down Ben Affleck's Batman, but Soren is only reinforcing that Ben Affleck nailed Batman. He's writing it like, oh, he's really embodying the Batman character. Soren acknowledges that Batman has never been a load of laughs, but then tries to describe Ben Affleck's portrayal as bad, even though the adjectives used to describe Ben Affleck's portrayal is Batman as a character. Like, that's Batman. I don't understand why Soren needs to compare Affleck and Bale here. They are different interpretations with different stories and different character arcs. They don't have anything to do with each other than the fact that Batman is in the story. And this is the worst part. This is like the most offensive part of this section, in my opinion, is the statement that Ben Affleck's Batman is missing his humanity. His entire arc is about his humanity and the humanity of the world. His arc deals with the man versus God theme, about connecting to Superman based on their shared humanity through their mothers, about how men are still good. Men are still good, as in humans are still good. This section of the review comes across to me like Soren didn't really pay attention to the film. I can't imagine that you would watch Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice as a professional film critic, a film reviewer who is a Rotten Tomatoes top critic, and come away with it saying that it has nothing to do with Bruce Wayne's humanity. What? What? And to kind of, we're almost close to the end, so I'm just going to keep going, then I'll get back into the chat. So then he goes on to talk about Henry Cavill's Superman, writing, quote, Henry Cavill returns to the role of Superman, which he first played in Man of Steel, the box office hit that opened the way for Snyder to be given the keys to Batman v Superman. He's another pained stone face, but at least his character isn't a psycho. Neither is he particularly sympathetic, unquote. Another pained stone face? Wouldn't you be if everyone on the planet was questioning your very existence? If you were being questioned, in some ways punished for helping people? If someone was trying to murder you? Scratch that. Maybe multiple people trying to murder you? Wouldn't you be a little pained in stone face? How is and then I guess another question I have is, how is Clark Kent or Superman not sympathetic in the story? He's doing his best to help people, but because Lex Luthor is framing him, part of the world continues to hate him. They think that everything that they're seeing is something that Superman's doing, even though Lex Luthor is just framing it to look like Superman's doing it. When Clark doesn't know what to do, he reconnects with his dead father for advice. He goes up against Doomsday because he has a love for Lois Lane, his world, and for the world. What does Clark Kent / Superman need to do in this film for Soren to find him sympathetic? That maybe says more about Soren than it does about Superman. Okay, and so I guess this is the final section here. We're almost at the end. We're at the home stretch. So Soren writes, quote, many decisions. The miscasting of Affleck and Eisenberg, such misguided rejiggerings of classic story elements as making Alfred, played by Jeremy Irons, less of a butler and more of a stubbly electronics expert who keeps the bat gizmos running right. The decision to de-emphasize those cool gizmos, sparingly seen are the Batmobile and the Batwing, along with an unrelieved atmosphere of oppressiveness, make Batman v Superman a joyless slog, unquote. How are Affleck and Eisenberg miscast? I wish I had more details on that because Soren up above in the review basically said that Ben Affleck was Batman. Like, he described Batman to a T. So I don't know how Ben Affleck is miscast. And Eisenberg, he obviously misunderstood the whole thing about the hair and didn't know anything about Superman Birthright, anything they were trying to do with Lex Luthor in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. He didn't seem to really understand that story and that character. So I don't think he makes a real strong story there, strong argument there. He also, Soren, I shouldn't say he. I don't know if Soren is a male or female. I'm sorry about that. But there's a quote in the review that says rejiggering of classic story elements. Soren uses the example here about rejiggering of classic story elements that Alfred, who's played by Jeremy Irons, was less of a butler and more of a stubbly electronics expert who keeps the bat gizmos running right, to argue that he basically says that the way that Alfred is portrayed in BVS is a rejiggering of a classic story element. Not really. In some Batman stories, Alfred Pennyworth is an MI6 agent. It's not a stretch that he would be good with technology and could help fly the Batwing remotely and operate other Bat gadgets. Plus, he never stops doing his butler duties. He brings Bruce hot tea and orange juice to him in the Batcave. He also gives Bruce wise advice and calls him on his crap, just like every other Alfred Pennyworth in the history of Batman stories. And you know what? So what if BVS makes Alfred and a more active character? This interpretation makes Bruce and Alfred seem more like partners, and I think that's a unique and different approach for Batman on film that works in this particular picture and universe. So what if it does? It makes sense in this particular story. And Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is really faithful to the comic stories it's adapting. The opening sequence with the death of the Waynes is straight out of The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. There are comic book homages to the death of Superman. The film pulls a lot of visuals from Superman Peace on Earth. It even introduces elements from Injustice. The only rejiggering it did was what every adaptation should do: be faithful to a point and then make it your own. And I think BVS did that really well. Also, the Batmobile and the Batwing are sparely seen. There are entire sequences featuring them. There's an entire Batmobile chase sequence, and the Batwing is featured heavily in the Martha rescue and the Doomsday fight. So, in conclusion, having read all of Soren's review, I don't agree that Batman v Superman is a joyless slog, and I don't think the arguments put forth in this review are good or strong enough to stand by that statement. So now that I've gone through that, I'm going to hop back into the chat and see what other people are talking about. Let's see. Dennis says film noir was actually the inspiration for the Batman mythos. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely you can definitely see that in a lot of the early comic book stories and even the early live action Batman stuff that was being made at the time. Let's see. David brings up Mark Waid's takeaway from a reaction to Man of Steel. Actually, I don't want to talk about that because back when I had a personal Twitter at Derby Kid, I believe that was my handle back in the day when I was on Twitter. I said something on Twitter about how I thought it was unfair because I read Mark Waid's review on Man of Steel, and I thought it was unfair the way he talked about the military. And I tweeted it as much, and I didn't tweet it at him. I didn't like send it like I didn't send any hate his way. I just put a tweet out saying, I disagreed and I thought it was unfair of the way that he talked about the military. And Mark Waid like tweeted at me really defensively, and I was like, whoa, dude. What? I am a nobody. Why are you coming at me so hard? And I cannot to this day, and maybe it's because I deleted my Twitter, but I couldn't find that. I should have like screen capped it or something. But I was like, dang, dude, are you just like searching for yourself on Twitter and coming at people who are talking about your reaction to that film? It was the weirdest, most bizarre thing. I was like, you obviously cannot handle criticism very well. And I love Superman Birthright. I think he's a pretty good comic book writer. I even enjoyed his Legion of Superheroes run, but I was like, back up, man. Calm down. I just said I didn't agree with what you said about the military and Man of Steel. I thought the military was awesome and they helped Superman save the day. And I think that's awesome that the military, especially the American military, was shown to be so heroic. A lot of those people died. You should give them credit for it. And that's all I was trying to say. So Mark Waid's reaction to Man of Steel resulted in a weird day for me to get a strange reaction like that. That was the weirdest thing that probably ever happened to me on Twitter. Let's see. Yeah, David also brings up Clay probably was hoping the black and white photo of Lex Luthor would hide the fact that he was in an orange prisoner t-shirt. It's a good point. Probably was a little bit because if you release it before we probably knew going into the film, knowing that Lex Luthor would probably be taken into custody, but that would have spoiled some things. Let's see. And Dennis brings up the fact that Lex has always had ginger hair before going bald in the comics, except in the Golden Age, aka Earth 2, where he never lost his hair. That's true. Lex Luthor, I'm trying to think. The era around the death of Superman, especially, that was like the clone Lex Luthor at the time, who was actually hanging out with the Matrix Supergirl, who could shapeshift and like had Lana Lang's memories or something. That Lex Luthor had red hair. Smallville's Lex Luthor had red hair before going bald. So it's very typical for Lex Luthor to have had hair at the beginning of his life, and it's always pretty much typically. I'm trying to think if there's another instance of Lex Luthor having a different hair color. I think in like the Donnerverse with Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, he has all those different wigs and things like that, and Kevin Spacey's is kind of the same. But for the most part, if Lex Luthor has hair in a story, it's going to be red, or ginger, as Dennis puts it here. Let's see. Andy says we were so blessed to have Ben Affleck's Batman. I agree. Let's see. Dennis also says Ben Affleck's Batman has no humanity. I would say rushing to to a falling building to save your employees is the definition of having humanity. If that wasn't having way too much humanity, anyway, boss number one. Yeah, Dennis, that's a great point. Especially that whole sequence, because he's putting his entire life on the line to go save his people. Like, those are his people who work for him. And he obviously, the character Jack, who he's talking on the phone with, he obviously cares about Jack. And it's obviously a devastating loss when the phone cuts out, either because he's friends with Jack, or they've worked together for a long time, or maybe Jack knew his parents or something. I don't know what their relationship was, but Bruce cared about Jack and the people in his building, and he rushed through Metropolis to try to save them. And then when everything crashes and burns, and there's that kind of that 9/11 imagery with the smoke coming and everybody running around, and you have that really awesome Batman shot of Bruce running towards the smoke. That's his humanity. He's running into that smoke. No Batsuit, no Batmobile, no gadgets, just him and a really good-looking vest. Like, that's all he has going into that smoke, is just Bruce. And so, yeah, it's Bruce Wayne's humanity is all over PBS, and I think that's such a cool way to approach it, because he's going up against a god in Superman. So I think that's really cool. And then Andy talks about Bruce's humanity. Bruce literally sees Clark as a person when he hears the name Martha, reminding himself, oh my God, this man is just like me. He also had a family. Yep. Let's see. David also brings up Michael Go. I think that's how you pronounce it. His Alfred participated in the tech. Yeah, I mean, Alfred on Gotham, like, teaches Bruce how to box. Like, some of these Alfreds are really, in there with him. Let's see. Andy says Soren is a male. Just looked it up. Thanks for confirming. I never know. Sometimes it's not obvious, so I don't want to, say the wrong thing. Let's see. Continuing on. David says the military is one of the smaller things Mark disliked about Man of Steel. Yeah, it's weird that he blew up at me personally. I was like, I don't even know who you do. I've read your comics, but I disagreed with you. It's no big deal. Like, chill out. But yeah, Mark Waid didn't like Man of Steel. That's unfortunate. I feel bad for him about that. I think it's his loss, but he's allowed to have his opinion. I was allowed to disagree with him, so that's how the free market of ideas works. So yeah, maybe one day he'll look at it in a fresh new light, and he'll be like, you know what, Man of Steel is actually pretty good. He won't admit that to anybody, even if he does. But maybe one day Mark Waid will turn around on his opinion on Man of Steel. But in all fairness, if he doesn't like it, he doesn't like it. But in my opinion, that's his loss. And David says, to be fair, I almost expected Lex to get off scot-free in BBS. What I think is really cool about Lex Luthor at the end of Batman v Superman is that he wins. He wins. He kills Superman. Well, he doesn't. Doomsday does, and with the big spiky, kind of dagger spike that comes out. So Doomsday actually does it, but I think Lex Luthor gets partial credit because he does create the thing that killed Superman. So anyway, I think that it's interesting the way they let Lex Luthor win there, and actually killing Superman. So I think that's a cool way to go about it. Yeah, and Andy says about the Mark Waid situation. I never knew that happened to you. It's no big deal. I've kind of long since kind of let it go, but when people bring up his Man of Steel reaction, that's kind of what I think about. Okay, so I think we've gone on a long time, but I think we got through the review and we had a good discussion about some things. So I think that's gonna wrap it up for this week's live stream. If you missed this live and you watch it later, I hope you'll consider sharing your thoughts in the comment section below. If you ever have any questions about when I'll be live, check this YouTube channel. I will be scheduling streams in advance when I'm available, so you'll always know when I'm going to go live. And if you have a Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice review that you thought was written really well and you'd like to share it with others, please comment below with that link and I'll share it in future videos, because we talk about reviews here that maybe are not well thought out or well written or have any real arguments to them or actually talk about the merits of the film. So it might be good to look at reviews and film critiques that actually do that actually do have some value and share some analysis. So that might be something that we would all like to see. I think that would be a good practice and project as well. Well, I just want to also mention before I go that I want to make viewers aware that I'm raising money for the Breast Cancer Research Foundation of Alabama. So if you are so inclined to give, there's a link to my donation page in the video description of this live stream. I am personally a breast cancer survivor, and this cause and organization mean a great deal to me. So if you have the chance to donate, I thank you for your support. And now I'm going to turn it over to voiceover Rebecca and let her wrap up this stream.
If you would like to see more of these live streams, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. If you'd like to keep in touch with me personally, you can follow me on Instagram at @TheDerbyKid and on Vero at DerbyKid. You can hear my thoughts on the CW Supergirl TV series and all things Kara Zor-El over at Supergirl Radio by visiting supergirlradio.com, subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts, or subscribing to the DCTV Podcast YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/DCTV Podcasts. Also, please check out the Justice League Universe podcast for in-depth analysis on the DCEU films, including Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And before I go, I hope that this live stream video series will inspire you to think more critically and thoughtfully about film and storytelling. I'd like to leave you with this quote from C.S. Lewis's book titled An Experiment in Criticism. The truth is not that we need the critics in order to enjoy the authors, but that we need the authors to enjoy the critics. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I love Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I am publishing a series of videos exploring the reasons why I am such a fan of Zack Snyder's film. In this series, you'll find my thoughts on topics that matter to me, like Larry Fong's cinematography, character analysis on Lex Luthor and Lois Lane, the Christian imagery, what I find hopeful about the movie, and yes, I'll address the critical reception. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I hope you will get something out of this series and find out why Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice has had such a profound, heartfelt, and inspiring impact on my life.